The missing children incident is the single most important event in the entire story of Five Nights at Freddy's, setting the stage for the animatronic possessions and every other tragedy since. But that is seemingly not the only set of 5 children being murdered in the timeline. In FNaF 2, we're introduced to the death minigames, where each time the player is jump scared, there's a small chance that 1 out of 4 8-bit minigames will unlock. These include Take Cake to the Children, where we witness the murder of Charlie Emily by William Afton, Foxy Go Go Go, where we see the murder of the 5 missing children, Give Gifts Give Life, in which the puppet, now possessed by Charlie, stuffs the bodies of the missing children inside the animatronics, and finally Save Them, taking place in the FNaF 2 pizzeria with 5 dead bodies scattered around, and William Afton being the one responsible. This event is often called the Dead Children Incident by some in the fanbase, in order to differentiate it from the Missing Children Incident. But as to who these 5 corpses belong to and to what happened to them still remain a mystery 10 years since. I want to give my own personal narrative as to what I think it is that we see play out in the Save Them minigame. And to start off, we need to establish when the minigame takes place. Given the building's layout and the presence of the toy animatronics, the Save Them minigame must take place during the time frame that the FNaF 2 restaurant was open for during November of 1987. Phone Guy tells us that the new Foxy animatronic became the mango after kids ripped the animatronic apart, and since we see the broken mango in Save Them, this means that the restaurant must have already been open by the time that the Dead Children incident takes place. On top of this, we can infer that the minigame is taking place at night, since the restaurant is deserted. We also know from the phone guy that there was only one other night guard that worked at the location prior to Jeremy Fitzgerald, working 1 week during the night shift before being moved over to the day shift. This night guard is most likely William Afton, as we see him wearing a security badge on his chest during Save Them. If we call the week that Jeremy and Fritz work on as week 2, then I will be calling the week during which William is the night guard as week 1. So, Save Them must be taking place during one of the nights of week 1. This also aligns to explain the missing table inside the party room of Cam 4, which is gone during week 2 but present during week 1 in Save Them. Now that we have a clear time frame, let's go over who the victims might be and what happened to them. We are dealing with a total of 5 victims as per the 5 corpses scattered around. Some people have theorized that there might be a 6th victim due to there being duplicate blood puddles in one of the rooms, but those are still contained within a single room next to each other, which to me seems to indicate that they both came from the same source. Some people also claim that these victims must be the ones to possess the toy animatronics. One of the pieces of evidence for this is Mango being able to move during the Save Them minigame. I disagree with this piece of evidence due to Mango being a broken animatronic, which means it is very much possible for her to move regardless of her being possessed or not, due to her being a mass of parts. We also see this in gameplay, as Mango is always making static noises even when her difficulty is turned to 0, which should deactivate her, but she stays on regardless, although not aggressive. The toy animatronics are possessed, however. We know this due to their behaviors and Mango's ability to climb on the ceiling. But Save Them might not be the cause of this. Phone Guy tells us that the withered animatronics are used for parts, which are then used on the toys. This means that the spirit of the missing children also resides on the toy animatronics. We see examples of spirits having the ability to possess multiple animatronics at once in multiple stories within the books. So while yes, the toy animatronics are indeed possessed, it seems more likely for it to be due to the missing children rather than due to the Dead Children incident. If the children in Save Them actually possess the toys or are relevant in any way at all, they would have been mentioned by now. Think about it. Scott Cawthon has had numerous opportunities to mention that these victims exist during the entire decade since FNaF 2 came out, But during that time, there hasn't been a single mention of a second set of victims throughout the entirety of the franchise. That is 10 whole years in which the only children ever mentioned to have died in the game timeline were the crying child, Charlie, the 5 missing children, and Elizabeth. And this is what makes the dead children incident the most overlooked event in the entire FNaF timeline, not only by fans but also by Scott himself. In the FNaF 3 following minigames, we see 5 spirits belonging to 5 missing children. At each party, there are 5 cupcakes presenting the 5 missing children. In Happy Day, we see 6 masked children, the 5 missing children, and Charlie. In FNaF 3, we have Captain Freddy, Jacob Fox, and Mango, Bloom Bay, and Puppet, possibly representing the 5 missing children and Charlie. Plus Phantom Freddy, which I consider to be representing the bad victim. In the ending of FNaF 3, we see the 5 animatronic masks possessed by the 5 missing children. In this tragedy, there were 6 total children were killed by William, the missing children, and Charlie. And the cadet, the Simulator, tells the story of 5 children becoming 1. In one of the endings of the Simulator, we see 6 gravestones, 5 for the missing children and 1 for Charlie. In Toshika's high school years, we see Toshika kill 6 animatronics, plus an extra 7th death, possibly symbolic of the bad victim. In the Faster Frights novels, William is again shown to have killed 6 children. In the first Bad Bird, Bird Help Wanted, we see 8 tombstones surrounding a cushion one that represents William. The 8 tombstones match the number of deaths, but we know exist. 5 missing children, Charlie, the bad victim, and Elizabeth. And again, in Princess Quest, we see a total of 6 tombstones, 5 missing children, and Charlie. In Help Wanted 2, we collect action figures with the 5 animatronics and the puppet. We also collect 6 bodies of these animatronics. And again, we see a total of 6 tombstones in Princess Quest 4. Even in the movie, we have William kill a total of 6 children. Why is it that we do not see at any point a combination that includes the SAVETHEM children? Despite having a complete minigame dedicated to these 5 victims, there is not a single mention of this additional 5 victims throughout the 10 games, 30 books and movie that have come out in the past decade. But why? Are they just completely irrelevant compared to the original missing children? And if so, why? Just because they weren't the first ones to be murdered shouldn't make them this irrelevant to the lore. Regardless of who you think was killed first, all the children that we know of are given important roles in the story despite their death placement in the timeline, except for the dead children incident victims. And also, why 5 victims? William killed 5 kids before, so why did he kill exactly 5 more? And instead of killing them one by one during the span of different days like he did with the missing children, SAVETHEM chose the victims scattered around the building on the same night. So why? What is Scott thinking about introducing a new set of victims, doing absolutely nothing with them, and never dropping a single mention of them for 10 whole years? Unless there never was a second set of victims to begin with. What if what we're seeing here is William discovering the corpses of his previous victims inside the withered animatronics for the first time? That might explain why no new victims were ever mentioned, while also explaining the corpses lying around. And that will mean that instead of murdering 5 new kids that are never talked about again, SAVETHEM is about William ripping out the bodies of the missing children from within the animatronics in order to get rid of their corpses. Remember, William was caught in security camera footage taking the children to the safe room, but the reason he never got convicted of the murders was due to the bodies of the children never being found. And if the puppet was the one who stuffed the bodies, William wouldn't have a single clue where the corpses of his victims went, at least not until he starts working as a night guard for the second location, and notices that the withered animatronics are moving around at night. And wouldn't you know it, curiosity pushes him to check the animatronics insides, and that's when he discovers the bodies. We know that the withered were eventually going to be used for parts for the toy animatronics, which is what I believe leads to the toys being possessed by the souls of the missing children as well. So if parts were going to be taken out of the withered animatronics, the bodies were at risk of being discovered by Fazbear Entertainment. We know that the toys haven't received the parts yet, since they aren't moving. William is smart. He knows that if the bodies are found, he would once again stand trial for the murders of the children in light of new evidence, and most likely end up in prison for real. So he does the logical thing a child murderer would do. He gets rid of the evidence. When we play SAVETHEM, what I believe we are seeing is the aftermath of William ripping out the mangled bodies and dropping them on the floor around the restaurant. spilling blood and fluids as a result, which is why we see 5 rooms with blood puddles in them. Also, I would like to mention that yes, dead bodies can indeed release blood. The bodies being inside the animatronics are in a perfect environment to allow slow decomposition, as they are in an airtight space with no exposure to the environment. And when a person dies, rigor mortis sets in, where the blood sets at the lowest point of the body and coagulates due to the lack of circulation. But this also means that if an opening is made in the area where the blood coagulated, the blood will come out. An opening that could have been made from the bodies being forcefully ripped out and cut from all the metal parts that surrounded it. And this is not the only time mummification is part of FNaF. In the Tales from the Pizzaplex story, Alone Together, we read of a child who has been dead for 2 years, just like the missing children by the time of FNaF 2. And when that child is discovered, we see that he has been mummified due to the airtight space his body was stuck inside of. Alone Together also answers why SAVETHEM is called SAVETHEM, despite the children already being dead. It is established that one of the methods that allows a ghost to finally find rest in the afterlife is to bring peace of mind to everyone attached to the ghost and the ghost themselves. For example, in Alone Together, the main character, Travis, is not aware that he is a ghost. He cannot find peace for 2 reasons. 1. His body was never discovered, and 2. His father did not get over the death of his son. But after his father finally accepted that his son was gone, and after Travis himself found his own corpse, Travis was able to find rest. We also see this with Travis' grandma, who is also a ghost. The only reason she lingers around as a ghost is due to Travis constantly thinking of her. It also comes down to both the living and the dead, both having peace regarding someone's death. This also means that if a spirit might still hold a grudge against a living or dead person, or if that spirit still feels they have a mission left to accomplish, that spirit will still dwell on Earth as a ghost due to it not having found peace yet. In the Fazbear Fright story, The Scoop, we are told of a child who dies inside an animatronic bear. But once someone found the corpse of the child inside, and the police and family were notified, the spirit of the little boy was able to find peace. Likewise, William removing the bodies of the missing children from the animatronics jeopardizes the opportunity for the spirits and their families in finally getting closure to what happened to their sons and daughters. William prevents those families from finally getting some form of peace, and that is the very reason why we the players are told to save them. To save the children from being missing forever. To save their opportunity to finally find peace. To protect the last remaining proof as to what happened to them, and not just peace for them, but also their families. But as we are told, we can't. We are unable to save them, and William Afton succeeds in removing the corpses of his victims within the blind spots of the cameras, and leaves the building with the bodies in order to discard them. But that is not all. As I already established, the SAVETHEM minigame takes place before the week of the FNaF 2 gameplay, but it is not until night 3 of week 2 that the phone guy tells us that a tragic incident occurred. So if the SAVETHEM minigame occurred during the week before, why is he saying that just now they discovered something tragic? Well, phone guy specifies that the rumors are about something outside of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. He even denies the situation having anything to do with Freddy's, something he could not have covered up with a lie if it actually occurred inside the pizzeria. But of course, whatever occurred outside of the pizzeria had something to do with Freddy's, since the following day, a police investigation begins that leads to the pizzeria closing down temporarily, as mentioned in the Night 4 and Night 5 phone calls. So we're dealing with a tragic situation that occurred far outside of the establishment, but still had something to do with Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, something that is commonly known around the local area since it started rumors directed at the pizzeria, and warranted a police investigation on the establishment the following days. I believe that this tragic event is the discovery of the missing children's bodies, where William tried to dispose of them. This would check all the boxes. The local community still has an open wound regarding the missing children incident, as the kids disappeared just 2 years before. And being the same children that disappeared at Freddy's years before, it would definitely warrant an investigation at the restaurant since the bodies were finally discovered, reopening the investigation. And given that William was the prime suspect for the disappearances years before, it would definitely make sense that the pizzeria would ban him from entering the restaurant during Night 5, aka the day after the investigation began. But once the bodies are found, this would not be enough to put William in jail. Again, the cameras only caught him luring the kids into a back room. They never saw the kids walk out. Therefore, there will need to be some evidence proving that William killed the kids in the back room and then removed the bodies from the location. But since there is a complete lack of such evidence, William is able to still walk free. I would also like to mention the Night 6 phone call. Phone guy says that someone used a yellow suit, which caused the animatronics to become even more aggressive. This has led some people to believe this implies William used his Springlock suit to kill the SAVETHEM kids. But this occurred 3 days after the investigation began at Freddy's, and while William is banned. What seems more plausible to me is that someone decided to wear Fredbear's suit for one reason or another, and it simply triggered the animatronics into being more aggressive. To conclude, not only does this mean that SAVETHEM reveals what happened to the children's bodies, it also directly shows us how William first became witness to possession and what led him down the path of experimenting on Remnant. We never had an answer as to how William ever came to know how animatronic possession worked. William can't just happen to know that possession is a real thing at this point, especially since William is just some guy working in a restaurant business. He is not some mad scientist with an evil lab, at least not yet. Some other people believe that William simply saw the puppet become haunted, which is what led him to his interest in possession, but this has never been shown or hinted at. Do you honestly think that William would see the puppet acting odd, however that would look like, and just happen to come to the conclusion that the girl he killed in the back alley is the one haunting it? How is it that William could just happen to be completely right that possession is at play here by just glancing at this thing? But SAVETHEM directly shows us when and what he witnessed that led him to finding out what possession is, as he can see a direct correlation of the animatronics having literal dead children inside to them being aggressive at night, probably even witnessing Golden Freddy teleporting around the pizzeria like we see in SAVETHEM. And he could then put 2 and 2 together and decipher that the corpses inside the suits are what causes the animatronics to become haunted. And this is the event that sparks the idea inside William to find the source of immortality, to experiment on the supernatural, and to make creations that will help him fulfill his goals. If this theory is correct, that means that FNaF 2 always had the answer as to how William discovered Remnant. If the bodies of the kids were ever discovered, who discovered them, and what happened to them afterwards. I know this entire theory is different from most fan interpretations. Still, I am personally convinced it is the most plausible. and I am probably the only one in the world that believes that so far, since I haven't seen anyone else share this theory of mine. But hopefully, I can make some people at least play around with the idea.